So I can imagine the event was quite grueling, to say the least. So tell us a bit more about the event kind of itself and how you were feeling.
Yeah, grueling's definitely one of the words. It took in total, my time was, I think it's 6 hours 18 minutes, and of that, I was recording all my heart rate data and things. I saw the highest heart rate I think I've seen since I was about 20. Luckily it was afterwards, so I didn't see it at the time, so it didn't put me off. And my average heart rate was really, really high. I mean, higher than I think it had been in any training session since January. And the energy expenditure was quite ridiculous. I mean, as you know, I don't really pay too much mind to calories and such. But according to this, the energy expenditure was about 7,000 calories. Yeah, which is quite a lot. In terms of how I was feeling during it, I had a little hamstring injury in the weeks leading up, which I think I've talked about already. So initially I was a little bit apprehensive about whether that would bother me or not. Fortunately it didn't. I had too many of the aches and pains and just generally feeling tired to worry about. I actually felt pretty good physically, I would say, for almost up to about halfway. And then what happened just before that is that we'd spent more time in the water. And one thing I hadn't anticipated or bargained for was the effect that being obviously that hot and that kind of extreme exertion, then jumping in pretty cold seawater, one of the reactions of your body is just to go and go into cramp. So you jump in the water and suddenly all the way up your legs would just cramp up. And then obviously you've got to swim back, and then you get back onto land, you'd still have some kind of cramp, and then you'd have to start running again. And I pretty much had some kind of cramp or quite extreme tightness in every muscle, some of which I don't even know what they are. I was trying to work it out as I was going along, below my waist for most of the second half of the race. So some of it was almost trying to manage that, and then you're conscious that you're perhaps changing your running style a little bit, and then you get the cramp to move more to the front of your legs and then to the back. So yeah, it was quite intense in that way. The other thing that was interesting was that I was feeling you've got quite a lot of time to think, and as I was doing it myself, I wasn't doing it as part of a team or with anybody else. I was completely on my own. I spoke to a few of the competitors, but most of the time I was on my own. So you get quite philosophical, and also because you're under quite extreme exertion, I think it takes off some layers around your thinking that you don't often get to. So yeah, I had a few thoughts which I made sure I wrote down later on that evening. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. I should probably bear this in mind for the future. And one of them, first of all, and this came from a conversation with a competitor actually, when they asked what I did for a living. And I told them, and they said, oh, this will be easy for you then. And I was like, not exactly. And I just thought that was really interesting how people assume that if you work in the world of health and fitness in some way, that you're some kind of world-class athlete. And the reality is really quite different. As far as I see it, I'm the normal guy. I'm trying to run a business, trying to kind of manage the demands of having a family and doing your best there. Certainly don't consider myself to be any type of athlete, and particularly in an event like this, as I've said already, I'm definitely not a runner. So yeah, it was a long way out of my comfort zone. other things I was thinking about, again, that I noted down, was that I was quite amazed looking back, because I was thinking back over all the months that I was doing the training, about the levels of self-doubt, I suppose. I don't consider myself to be somebody who has a huge amount of self-doubt, but I definitely did when it came to this. At various times I was questioning, am I too old to be doing something like this? Am I too heavy? Am I the wrong build? Do I have the discipline? And am I too busy? Because that's the obvious one. It does take up a lot of time and a lot of commitment. And all those things were coming up almost on a weekly basis. I guess particularly the discipline one was interesting to me, because when I was younger and doing more sport, it's almost just what you do. It doesn't take, in your teens and I suppose early 20s, it didn't seem to take that much effort. It was just part of your life. It was automatically a priority. It didn't feel like you were making any choice between that and something else. At my grand old age now, it felt like in order to do something this extreme, I had to make a lot of quite deliberate and quite difficult choices to stick to the plan and make sure it happened. Then the other thing, I guess, going back to the self-doubt a little bit, was again harking back to part of the conversation earlier. I was thinking about how my body hadn't changed as I'd expected. I expected to lose quite a bit of weight and be much smaller, which would help me running, and actually that didn't happen. And I guess I was starting to come to terms with that by then, because I didn't have much choice, and so I was doing the event as I was. And it got me thinking about this concept about right sizing of your body. And I could think of some examples with clients, but do some of us try and force our body into a kind of a natural state and a natural shape? And by doing that, is that in itself quite unhealthy? So yeah, I was definitely thinking, by trying to become a runner with a runner's physique, that was probably not healthy for me. It was like I was trying to force my body to go into a shape they didn't want to do. And in reality, in order to perform well, it sounds really obvious when you're saying that, but focusing on your health and being as healthy as possible. And so within certain parameters, allowing your body to be kind of how it wants to be naturally. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well. But yeah, rather than trying to force it into a shape that it's definitely not suited to. So that was, I guess, kind of one of the messages for me, was that, you know what, I kind of was right in that respect, that I'm not built ideally for extreme endurance, particularly in distance running, which kind of brings me on to another lesson, which is, I was in two minds whether to share this with people, actually, so I don't know whether it's slightly demotivating. And I felt this sensation in some of my longer training runs, and I also felt it in the event, is that for me, it felt like I got to a point where it stopped being healthy. It stopped being healthy physically. It actually felt like I was potentially damaging my body. I don't know what the exact time is, but maybe something like 2 hours. So again, this will be a personal thing, based on genetics and stuff. But perhaps for me, a line, if you like, for fairly intense activity is about 2 hours. Maybe up to 2 hours, it's healthy, it makes me stronger, it makes me fitter, it benefits my organs, all that kind of stuff. But maybe after that, those benefits are not there anymore, and it actually does become harmful. There is lots of research, of course, on extreme endurance activities now, and potential negative long-term health consequences. So I thought that was quite an interesting thought, but I didn't want to be kind of discouraging exercise or putting people off. But it's definitely taught me that this is not something that I think is good for me to do over and over again. So I won't be doing another one in the next few months, and I will definitely think very carefully before doing anything that extreme again, because my all-round health is so important to me.
Okay, I'll cross your name off the next marathon list then.
Not for me, thank you.
Okay, so you said kind of how you were feeling during the event. What did you feel like immediately after the event?
Relief that it stopped. The last few miles were quite difficult, because I say we were going around the coast path, and you kept kind of coming around these headlands, and there was another beach, and I thought, surely this must be the last one, and there seemed to be another one, and it seemed to drag on for quite a long time. So then, funny enough, the last maybe kilometre, I noticed there was a lady who I actually started right alongside, who was just ahead of me, and we'd met a couple of times on the route as well, and I was like, right, well, this seems fitting. We should like finish together, having started together. So I did make a bit of an effort and managed to catch her up. So we crossed the line together despite the cramp in the calves and things. So immediately after, the fatigue, I suppose, didn't really set in for a couple of hours, and then bit by bit, my whole body just really tightened up. I was obviously very thirsty, so I had protein shakes and stuff ready. So I had recovery shakes, loads and loads of electrolyte drinks. And then fortunately, near where we were staying, they had what turned out to be a very good pizza restaurant. So I ate an enormous pizza and basically stuffed my face. And then that night, I really struggled to get to sleep. I could feel my heart rate was still very high. My body was still very hot. It was the night England played the Ukraine as well. So yeah, I stayed up watching that. And then I couldn't really sleep very well. I ended up leaving our hotel room and going out and trying to sleep in the car, just because I needed a change of scene. I put some music on, listened to a podcast. Did eventually fall asleep in the car in some strange position, and then woke up and could barely move. I'd kind of completely seized up. So the next day, when I did go back to bed after that and managed to sleep a bit, I was just really tight. I was limping around, basically, very, very sore. And I had to drive home because I kept getting a little bouts of cramp and things. So yeah, I was a bit of a mess the following day. And then I think the day after, I definitely eased up a bit. I actually had to go to London on a train, which is probably quite a good thing. So I ended up walking around a bit after that. But that whole week, the following week, that was probably the most interesting thing to me. I just felt this very deep, kind of down to your bones, down to your core sense that all my reserves were gone. And not just physically, it was mentally. I had just zero patience. I'm perhaps not the most patient of chaps anyway, but let's say I'm usually a 5 out of 10. I was definitely down at a 1. So you just felt this really deep core tiredness that I've only experienced a few times before. And I reckon that probably took 3 weeks to recover from. The other thing, I suppose, in the few days after, was kind of, I felt a bit down. Actually, it was a bit of an anticlimax, because lots of people were saying to me, "Oh, you must feel amazing. You should be so proud. What an achievement! All this kind of thing." And I was just like, "Well, it's done. Not that I don't know if I took it for granted. I suppose I didn't really doubt that I was actually going to do it. Certainly not when I was doing it. Certainly not in the last few weeks. I did a bit before with injuries and things. So I guess the back of my mind was always an assumption that I would find a way to do it. So I wasn't really acknowledging it as much of an achievement that other people seem to be. Then I spoke to another one of our clients actually who does lots of endurance events, and he said to me actually, he said, "Do you find that you feel a bit down and a bit lost a few days afterwards?" And I was like, "Yes, that's exactly what I'm feeling." And we talked about it and thought that part of it is that you don't have a mission anymore. It's been such a big part of your life for so many months, and then that's gone. So you're kind of a bit rudderless, so to speak. So that was quite an interesting sensation as well.
Okay. And I guess finally, for anyone considering kind of setting themselves a big challenge like this, what would be your top 3 tips you give them?
Okay. This is an interesting one because Anna, my other half, actually, I'm not saying as a result of this, but she's actually just committed, and I'm just going to say this live on here for some accountability for her, to taking on some kind of physical challenge herself next year. Might be a bike race, we're not entirely sure yet. So I guess the things I would say is that I really recommend people doing it. I think it's really powerful to have a goal like that goes alongside any other goal that you're working on when it comes to your health and fitness or your body, because it means that if you are looking to change your body shape, for example, that will probably happen as a byproduct of the focus on this other goal. So it means I think it can help people not get too overly focused on aesthetics and on their physique. So that's very helpful. I was trying to stick to 3 things. I'm not sure if I can. Firstly, I would say is that I think we all have a tendency to underestimate ourselves and underestimate what we can actually achieve when we set our minds to it. All of us, we have these incredible bodies that are kind of there to be used, and much of the time we don't use them, we don't express ourselves in that way, and I think that's a real shame, because there's so much to be gained from doing it. And so if we are underestimating ourselves, we're also missing out on that potential. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but a lot of that potential for growth, for some kind of transformation of building confidence, comes from doing stuff that is outside of our comfort zone. And of course, the further you go outside your comfort zone, the more potential there is there. So definitely don't underestimate yourself. Do take on something that's big enough that it does make you doubt and scare you a little bit, because in overcoming that, I think that's a big part of the benefit. I'd also say choose something that you have a real connection with, and it inspires you in some way, rather than just, I want to do a marathon, I'll do the nearest one, or I want to do a marathon, I'll just do the London Marathon because that's the kind of the go-to choice. Be a bit more creative, look at other types of challenges, and pick something that you have a deeper connection with, some kind of emotional connection, whether it's to do with people or to do with places. And I think that will not only help you stay motivated along the way, but it will make it more meaningful and more satisfying when you come to doing whatever it is. I've said it already, I guess. Choose something that's big enough that it does scare you. That was the whole premise behind what I did. I'm very glad that part of that coaching course did suggest that. But the caveat to that would be, if you're going to do that, you have to do it right. So you have to give yourself enough time. You have to plan things properly. Get a coach involved in what you do, so you have some objective input, and so you can review what you're doing along the way. Because again, back to what I was speaking about earlier, that we all have other commitments and other priorities. We've all got partners, families, businesses, jobs, etc., etc. It has to work alongside those things. So you have to give yourself the right amount of time so you can plan it in, so that it becomes something that enhances your life, rather than being more likely that it takes away and becomes some kind of compromise. And lastly, I don't know how many things I'm up to now, probably too many. Lastly would be to deliberately involve other people. So not only will this provide some accountability, because once you've told people that you're going to do something, once you've committed to it publicly, then that's a pretty strong motivation to help you do that. But the reality is, if you're going to take on a big challenge, you need the help of other people. You need them to be on your team. You need them to be on your side. You need them to be your supporters. I can't tell you how much it helped to see my children at one of the drink stops. And I've got a whole list of people who helped me do this. And I might have been able to do it without their help, but I can tell you it would have been a whole lot more difficult. Physiotherapists, sports massage, people who helped me with the training plan, coaches, trying to think who else, anybody I did training runs with, and then I guess most of all my family, so Anna and my girls, who accepted that on Sunday mornings, for example, I probably wouldn't be around for quite a few hours. And also the girls were very good at getting faster and faster on their bikes, so I had to run faster and faster to keep up with them, which definitely pushed my training on significantly. And it just gave me an extra motivation to do it as well. So it's like, well, yes, I'm training and I'm getting something out of it, but then so are they. So it's like we're all in it together. So yeah, I would say deliberately involve other people, because you will need them.
Perfect. It's been really great to hear about your experience kind of with Man versus Coast, all the kind of from the training and leading up to it, and kind of your decision why to do the event, and to how you were feeling, I guess, during and after the event. So do you have any final comments?
I'm not sure really. I think I've talked about most things that I wanted to. I guess I just go back to, I hope it's been a useful insight for people, because again, a lot of people just assume that because you work in the world of health and fitness that all this kind of stuff is easy. And guess what? We're human. We're people too. But if it did in any way inspire anybody to take on a challenge, then I'd be very, very happy about that. And if anybody does want to talk about it a little bit more, then very open to doing that. And just, I guess, to underscore the thing about not underestimating ourselves. And I believe that everybody has it within them to do something, you know, really quite amazing when it comes to their health, you know, regardless of where they're at on their journey, even if they're just starting out, you know. So and it's relative, isn't it? You know, if someone hasn't done any exercise for a long period of time, then, you know, a huge achievement for them is quite different to somebody who already does a reasonable amount of exercise, or who already, you know, has a sport or a hobby that they do to a certain level. But neither is like a greater or lesser achievement. And I guess watching the Olympics at the moment is a bit more inspiration for that as well. Hearing people's stories. You know, not everybody in the Olympics who's even there or who is winning medals has followed the normal path, or has been doing the sport or whatever since they were 3. Some people have come to it quite late, and done it in a relatively short period of time. So yeah, I guess I just encourage anybody that if they do want to take on a challenge, if they do want to transform their health, or, you know, or do any kind of physical challenge like that, that there are just huge benefits to be had physically and mentally. And I guess very importantly, a lot of those benefits are transferable to everything that you do. So the confidence that you build, the strength that you develop in your body and your mind, you can use that in your job, you can use that in your personal life, and it will make everything else better. So yeah, don't underestimate yourself, and be brave and take something on.
Thank you.